Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Minor Issues Podcast. I'm Mark Thornton from the Mises Institute. I have been criticized by listeners lately that the podcast has been concentrating on major issues. So today I'm going super minor with the topic of piggy banks, yours and Uncle Sam's. Also, there are links to discounts for the next Mises Institute conference, as well as the Bitcoin versus gold contest for 2025 below. The piggy bank originated about 500 years ago at the dawn of capitalism, when ordinary people started to possess silver coins. The clay containers often only had a small slot to put coins in, so you literally had to break the bank if you wanted to spend the money. With increasing prosperity, the piggy bank was once used as a tool to teach children the purpose and importance of saving for their future. This 500-year tradition seems to be yet another minor detail of life that has been killed in a world dominated by fiat paper money. However, while the poor piggy has been slaughtered by inflation and big government, even in a world where most transactions are electronic, many people still have large amounts of coins, with one estimate approaching $100 worth on average per household. Media pundits have labeled all of this small change as just sitting around doing nothing, as irrational and a waste. And as usual, they're wrong. As we will see, sitting around just doing nothing is a real thing for many people, most especially as the government's inflation has driven down the value of our money. The value today of a pre-1965 silver dime is now worth $2.25 of silver. Now let's contrast all of this with U.S. Secretary of the Treasurer, Janet Yellen, who announced last week the government will once again, with the national debt ceiling upon them, have to break its own piggy bank to help pay the bills. Now, when regular people do something with their jar of small change, it could mean to help buying a holiday present or a needed medication. Some people even use their small change to make an extra payment into their retirement funds, a mortgage payment, or to pay down their credit card balances. Some people just continue to accumulate for a rainy day, and that's perfectly rational, especially for households that live paycheck to paycheck. You can even turn your spare change into an inflation fighting machine, as I will explain below. Now, this is not exactly the same type of thing your government is doing. Secretary Yellen wrote to Congress the week that she left office that her agency will start taking extraordinary measures or special accounting maneuvers to prevent the nation from hitting the debt ceiling and going into default on its obligations. In essence, they are once again employing accounting tricks for not paying certain bills in order to pay other bills. It does absolutely nothing to reduce government spending. It reminds me a little of a college friend who had 2 different checking accounts and was constantly making deposits and withdrawals and living on the float, or the time between the arrival of funds and when they would be credited or debited to his accounts. But not exactly the image of the United States as an economic superpower some of us would like to imagine. Of course, the even bigger problem is that the U.S. federal government has a debt somewhere in the range of 135 plus trillion dollars in net present value terms, several times compared to the total annual GDP of the U.S. And this is probably even more than the total private wealth accumulation in the U.S. They would have to cut expenditures by $3 trillion per year, every year, and sell off vast amounts of assets to turn this behemoth of a garbage scowl around. Now, in my book, this means the government is broke or bankrupt, and it suggests to me very strongly that our government is going to turn increasingly to inflation, to inflate away and secretly default on obligations to government pensioners, Social Security, Medicare, etc. In that world, you need some inflation protection, and you might just start to find that in your piggy bank. Just use your stash to buy some junk silver coins, those pre-1965 US coins, or other forms of silver or gold or Bitcoin, and continue to buy small amounts of it per pay period. Something like silver is more likely to increase in value with inflation compared to the fiat coins in your jar. And you are, of course, just as unlikely to spend that except in an emergency. And by the way, you may find some treasures in your piggy bank, like that junk silver, or even World War II nickels, which look like regular nickels but are made out of 35% silver, more than the actual silver dime. In addition, the current penny and nickel have a melt value near their denomination value, so it might be easier just to keep them in a container that can be used as an effective doorstop, a super paperweight, or a weapon, or as a strength training device.